I have two very simple questions for you. Is your podiatry business making the money that you feel it should be making for the amount of time you've been in podiatry? And are you having the time off with your family that you feel you deserve after all the time and effort you've put into your business? If you cannot answer yes to both of those questions, please go to my website, tysonfranklin.com, have a read through the coaching section, and consider reaching out to me. I really look forward to talking to you and helping you where I can. Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. Podcast designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. Today, I want to talk about a topic that is around why podiatrists sometimes find it difficult to take on new tasks or new challenges or to try something new. And how this came about, I have a group on Facebook called the Podiatry Business Owners Club. Now, if you have an interest in business, please come over and join the group. You're more than welcome. When people join the group, sometimes they'll share with me one of their biggest frustrations in podiatry. And it was somebody who was a business owner, and they were talking about when they have a new podiatrist join their team, sometimes that podiatrist is a little bit apprehensive to try new things, and they couldn't quite understand why. And they said it wasn't actually the new graduates that were the problem, new or recent graduates. It was more the podiatrists that had been out 5, 6, 7 years that seemed to have a little bit of an issue on trying something different. So I thought I'd dig into this and try and figure out why this actually happens. And of course, I've used multiple AI platforms to ask this question and then to get them to help me get a few answers. Now, one of the things that they said is, or one of the reasons was fear of looking incompetent. That makes sense. Because podiatrists will spend years becoming experts in podiatry. Yeah, we know more about the foot than anybody else. And it doesn't matter what the athlete's foot say, we know the foot better. And trying something new sometimes means they've got to become a beginner again, which can be quite difficult. And this relates to speaking on stage. If you have not spoken on stage, you're not very comfortable doing it, to go get out of your comfort zone and do that can be very uncomfortable. And some people just won't do it. They will just refuse to do it. And they may do it once or twice, and they figure out that they don't particularly like it. So then they don't pursue it any further. Learning new skills like AI, understanding ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and some of the other programs that are out there. Some podiatrists, they'll put their head in the sand and just hope it all goes away. But filming videos, like I'll admit, my videos now are so much better than what they used to be a year ago, 5 years ago. If you want to laugh, go to my YouTube channel, Tyson E. Franklin. Scroll back to some of my earlier videos and you'll see the lighting is terrible. The background wasn't tidy. Even the sound of some of the videos was a little bit tinny. But it's only by doing things and trying things. You only get better once you do something, because when you do something, you get some feedback. And then you know, okay, I can get a little bit better, and you keep improving from there. I look at my videos now, far better than what they were. But I look at my videos compared to some other people, and I go, wow, theirs are so much better than mine. But the point is, as long as you're still getting the message across. It's like this podcast. Is my audio the best audio going around? Probably far from it. But I do it all myself. I do it from a home office. I don't have a whole pile of fancy equipment, but it gets the job done. The important part is getting the message across. So if you're doing videos or whether you're doing audio, as long as the video quality is good enough and the audio quality is good enough, and you have something that's worthwhile sharing, then you need to just get in there and do it. But other things that people will sometimes put off is just using new technology. That can be frightening, or even starting a podcast. But a lot of podiatrists actually approach me and say, I'd love to have my own podcast. Where do I start? I will give them a few pointers on where to start from, but they never take that first step because they're just a little bit afraid, which, well, like I said, I totally get. Nobody likes feeling like the least knowledgeable person in the room, which is sometimes when there's something new, they won't put the hand up and ask questions. I think sometimes the smartest people are the ones who actually ask the questions, who are aware they're not quite sure what they're actually doing. The second reason that this is some people put things off or won't try something new is actually a fear of wasting money, because every new idea has a cost. Most people don't understand that. If you're buying new equipment that you have not used before, and it might be something completely different, there's going to be a certain money investment. If you're trying a new marketing campaign, somebody says you should spend some money in this particular area. To do that, you need to spend money. Is it going to work or isn't it going to work? Now, I know from experience some of the things that I've done that I've given people advice on, and I know it works because I did it myself, and I've done it with a whole pile of different coaching clients, and I know it works. But if they're going to try something completely different that I've never done before, they have to test it out themselves to see if it's going to work or not. That's going to cost money. Staff training is another thing. You need to bring on a new staff member. Oh, should I? Shouldn't I? It's that slight fear of whether you should do it or not. It's more so the fear of wasting money. If I employ someone and they don't do a good job, has it been a total waste of money and also a waste of time? Introducing new software is exactly the same thing. Getting apps for your phone is another thing, even though apps for your phone are extremely cheap. So test them out. If you don't like them, just dump them. And even business coaching. There's a lot of people I know who think about or have considered business coaching. I've probably had over 100 people in the last 2 years approach me about business coaching. Out of that group who have approached me and I've spoken to them, only a small minority of those people end up pursuing and doing some form of coaching with me. Even though they're asking the questions, it's just taking the next step because it means investing money. And they're worried, will I get the return on my investment? Totally understand that. The third thing that came up was a fear of patient rejection. They worry patients will think, is that too expensive? I've never heard of that before. My old podiatrist never suggested this. So when they're looking at taking on something new, introducing that to their patients can be a bit of a concern because they don't want to be judged by the patients. Ironically, patients usually judge confidence more than novelty. So if you have something new that they've never seen before, if you explain that with confidence, then even if it is something that's novel, that's never been around before, never been in your area, if you explain it with confidence, your patients are going to take it on board a lot more. The fourth thing that came up was fear of colleague criticism. They're thinking about doing something new or introducing something new, and they're wondering, how are my colleagues going to feel about this? And this, I think back to when foot mobilization first started and dry needling. Some of the podiatrists that took that on very early and ran with that, I'm sure, were a bit concerned on how they're going to be judged. But because they got positive results, they end up becoming the experts in that field. And then they started teaching it to others. Then everyone waited, what they call it, the bandwagon effect, is once they see everybody else doing it, then everybody jumps on board. I've mentioned it numerous times when I had my shockwave machine. We got it in 2011. If I went to a conference in 2011 and mentioned shockwave, very few podiatrists had one. You go to a conference now in 2026, it's only a minority who probably don't have a shockwave machine because they've now become popular. So fear of colleague criticism it's not an uncommon thing. They'll wonder, what will other podiatrists think? Will people think I'm just chasing money? They've come up with something new that it may generate money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they're worried, are they going to think that's all that I'm actually chasing? And no, that's not what you're chasing. And will they say I'm over marketing? And I used to get that a lot. I used to have a lot of people who would say that with all the, I used to market on television in Cairns. We used to be on the radio. We were in local newspapers and magazines. We were all over the place. I put a budget aside, 8 to 10% of my gross turnover. I put it back into marketing. And that was a lot of money each year. And I know that some people could look at that and say, wow, that's a lot of marketing you're doing. But because I always got a return, it didn't really bother me. And that's how my practice grew year on year on year, is by reinvesting money back into the practice. And I didn't care what other people thought. And healthcare can sometimes have a bit of a problem when some people think, are you standing out too much? I don't think there's any such thing as standing out too much. The fifth thing that came up was success feels comfortable enough. Yeah, the practice isn't failing. It's doing okay. The bills are getting paid. Their staff are getting paid. Patients keep coming back in without any problems. And that comfort becomes the biggest obstacle because change feels optional rather than necessary. Because they're doing okay and they think okay is good enough, they'll basically stay there. Because to do anything other than that is take them out of the comfort zone and feels a little bit awkward. The sixth thing was identity conflict. Many podiatrists and other healthcare professionals see themselves primarily as clinicians. They do not see themselves as business owners. For a lot of people, that's not why they got into healthcare. They didn't get into healthcare to have their own business. I did. I became a podiatrist and I chose podiatry because it was one of those areas that, yes, it was in healthcare. Yes, I could help people, but it was also one of those things that I knew that I could have my own business and work for myself. Unlike at the time when I was looking radiography. Radiography looked really interesting. However, you had to work for a radiologist. Optometry looked interesting. However, the setup cost of setting up an optometry clinic was far more than setting up a podiatry clinic at the time. These days, depends. It could be completely different. But like I said, most people got into podiatry or healthcare because they were primarily clinicians, not business owners. They weren't marketers. They never saw themselves as leaders. They never saw themselves as employers. They didn't think they would be employing other podiatrists and other support stuff and end up growing a team of people. I spoke to someone recently and they're saying they always thought there'd be a solo practitioner and then maybe have a receptionist working. And they said 5 years later, they had 4 podiatrists working for them and 10 other support staff. They've got 14 people there. And they go, how did this happen? Now they're loving it now, but that's not where they saw themselves initially. And that was very uncomfortable. So just be aware. If you feel the way, that it's totally fine. And even just creating content, creating videos and putting them out there. Some people just, they don't see themselves. That's not why I got into podiatry in the first place. So activities outside clinical care can sometimes feel to people, oh, is that something that podiatrists should be doing? Or maybe that's not what podiatrists should be doing. The seventh thing was, this one's really simple. And this is not just healthcare podiatry. This is everyone in general, fear of technology. And I mentioned before, AI, it's a perfect example. Some people think using AI is cheating. I don't think it is. I think it's like having an assistant with you, helping guide you through the processes of creating certain things. Some people will think when they look at technology that, oh, I'm too old. Yeah, that's passed me by. I won't be able to pick it up. Like I'm 60 and I love technology. So age shouldn't really have anything to do with it. It's more about attitude. Or they might think they just won't understand it. Yeah, it's too complicated. And because it's too complicated and going right back to the beginning, they don't want to look silly by not understanding something. It's like anything. Everything is hard until it's easy. And it only gets easier by doing it again and again. And a lot of people sometimes think, well, by the time I learn this, it's going to change. So what's the point? The point is you just need to get in there and do it. So technology often ends up being much easier, I think, than everybody expects. The eighth thing is just about perfectionism. And healthcare does attract perfectionists. And the thinking becomes, I'll launch it once it's perfect. I've heard so many people tell me, I'm going to, say even with book writing, I know a few people that were writing books and they never ended up getting them published because they kept waiting for them to be perfect before they did it. When I wrote It's No Secret, There's Money in Podiatry back in 2014, which is still 99% of that book is applicable today. But when I wrote that book, I was going backwards and forwards a few times until a friend of mine who had written 12 books before me was an author. And he said, just send it to the publisher. They will tell you it needs to be fixed up, fix up those things and just get it out there. It will never be perfect. Every time you look at it, there'd be something else that you would change. And I know right now, I got it out there, I got it published, and I read through the book again after it was published. I was really proud of what I wrote, but I did find a couple of mistakes in that book. And I would love to go back and rewrite that book and probably do a second edition. So if anyone is interested in me putting their effort in and creating a second edition, send me an email, tf@tysonfranklin.com, and just say, Tyson, you should write a second edition to that book, and I will. Now, back on the perfectionism, though, other things like your websites will never be perfect. I am always tinkering with my website. I could look at it every day and change something. There's always going to be something you can fix up. Videos, like I said before, are never going to be perfect. Mine are far from perfect, but I hope they're getting better over time. Having a newsletter, majority of podiatrists I talk to still do not have a newsletter, yet it's one of the easiest ways to maintain contact with your patients, but people just don't do it because they want it to be perfect. Your newsletter will never be perfect. The idea is just to get it out there. If you currently receive my newsletter, I'm sure you'll go through it and you go, sometimes it's great, and other times you go, yeah, could have been a little bit better. The one that I actually released today, the movie quote and lessons for podiatrists from it. Now, if you don't get my newsletter, send me an email, tf@tysonfranklin.com. I will add you to my newsletter. The movie that I've taken the inspiration from is Snakes on a Plane. It's a very interesting quote from Samuel L. Jackson. So the ninth thing is, and this is going to sound really odd, it's a fear of success. This sounds strange, but it's actually real. What if marketing actually works? Now they need another staff member. Like if all of a sudden they start marketing and it just goes gangbusters, patients start rolling through the door. They've got more patients than they know what to do with. They need another staff member. Maybe they need bigger premises. Maybe they need better systems to make things run better. They might be concerned, the bigger I get and the more successful, I might get more complaints. Don't know. If you're doing things the right way, the complaints should get less. But there's going to be more responsibility. They're worried that growth is going to create new problems. And I will admit, I have gone through this myself. Even now, I will be thinking about some ideas sometimes that, I might do this. And straight away, that little voice in the back of my head is going, but if you do that and it booms, how is that going to affect all these other things? And what's funny about it is usually when I try something, it never booms as well as what you think it's going to. You just got to accept that. And if it does boom, think of all the positives that will actually come from that. It is definitely worth doing. The 10th thing is we've always done it this way. This is what people tell themselves. One of the most expensive sentences in business is we've always done it this way. If you've ever been to one of my marketing workshops, I talk about the monkey step ladder. I won't go into it now because it takes a little bit of time. But if you're ever on YouTube, just type in monkey step ladder and have a watch of that video. It is quite interesting on that thinking we've always done it this way. Yet clinics growing the fastest usually will question everything. They'll question their appointment system. They'll look at their recalls. They'll question their pricing, their marketing, what technology they're using, and even patient communication. So a lot of people, when they're thinking about we've always done it the way, they let tradition win over innovation. And they use tradition to basically and deliberately hold themselves back. The 11th thing is they don't have permission. And you might be thinking, well, what does that mean? Sometimes they're simply waiting for someone that they respect to say it's okay to do something differently. They might be wanting to buy that piece of equipment or go and do that course, or maybe create something on social media that is a little bit left field from what they've ever done before. And they're just waiting for someone, a friend, a fellow colleague. It could be a family member, maybe a professional referrer, to just say to them, it's okay, just go and do it. So if that's what you're waiting for, just listen to me. It's okay to just go out there and do things a little bit differently to what everybody else is doing. Because if you're doing everything exactly the same as everybody else in your community, then how are you possibly going to stand out? You might be far better at so many aspects of podiatry. If you do not grab onto that and let everybody know that you're a very good, almost an expert in that particular area, how is anyone going to know about it? So there you have it. You have permission. It's okay to do things differently. And usually once they see other podiatrists succeeding or doing something like that, they see the risk of doing it themselves drop and they get on board. That's what the bandwagon effect is all about. People will see new technology. Say, for example, I'll use shockwave again. Should I get it or shouldn't I? Should I or shouldn't I? And they end up shooting all over themselves because they just keep waiting. Then they start noticing other people in their community getting a shockwave. Then all of a sudden, having patients coming in saying, do you have shockwave? And they go, okay, now I'm going to get a shockwave. If they'd done it earlier, they could have been ahead of the curve. And actually, it could have been really beneficial for the business. The 12th thing is the comfort zone isn't comfortable. And this is a bit ironic. Many owners complain about long hours. We've all heard podiatrists complain about long hours. Has anyone ever heard a podiatrist complain about staff shortages or I can't find a podiatrist? I hear it every week. They'll complain about inconsistent referrals or there's low profits or they're totally stressed out with just what they have to do day in and day out. Yet they continue doing the same things because it seems familiar. It's their comfort zone. But what's funny, like I said, the comfort zone isn't actually comfortable. It is extremely uncomfortable staying in the comfort zone. That churning feeling you feel in your stomach when you feel like you should be doing something, you're not doing it. That's what happens when you stay in the comfort zone. And the funny part with it, the what they're familiar with feels safer than the unknown, even when familiar isn't producing the results that they really want. And a good quote I read recently was, your comfort zone is a beautiful place to visit, but it's a terrible place to build the future of your practice. And it's something I want to leave you with here is every successful treatment you have ever offered was once something you had never done before. You learned biomechanics. You learned nail surgery. You learned shockwave. You learned how to use laser. You learned how to make an orthotic and which orthotic to choose for particular problems. So why is learning marketing or AI or leadership or public speaking any different? The skill isn't the obstacle. It's believing you're allowed to be a beginner again. You're allowed to be uncomfortable. You're allowed to feel like you don't know something. It's okay to not know everything. I hope you get something from this particular episode. Like I said, this has been a solo episode. I quite enjoy doing these. I've had some really positive feedback from some of these episodes. I would love your feedback. Please feel free to send me an email, tf@tysonfranklin.com or tyson@podiatrylegends.com. And if you haven't checked out the Podiatry Legends website yet, just go to podiatrylegends.com. Very easy to find. And if this is the first time you've listened to the podcast, or if you've listened to all 433 episodes and you haven't left a review yet, I would love a podcast review on whatever podcast platform you happen to be listening to this episode on. It, like they say, it helps the algorithm. It helps other people find this podcast. And it also lets me know that people are listening and actually care about the podcast. And that gives me the inspiration and motivation to keep putting this together. Okay, so I hope you got something from that. And as I usually say, I want you to look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now. Well, if you're still here, I thought this episode, because it was slightly short, it would be a great time to add an Easter egg. And what I want to talk about is marketing, sales, and delivery. They are the three aspects of nearly every business. And you might be thinking in podiatry, do we really have marketing, sales, and delivery? Yes, you do. So marketing is everything you're doing to attract patients to come into your business. So many different types of marketing that you can do. And some people find Instagram extremely successful. Other people, depending where they live, they may still advertise in a local newspaper. So marketing brings people in. Now, the sales part is really your education. It's how do you talk and how do you communicate with your patients? Because you may understand everything perfectly, but can you communicate your treatment plan and your ideas to your patients so that they understand it in plain English and can make a decision based on what you've told them? Now, the third part, delivery, you might be thinking, okay, well, what's the delivery? Whatever treatment plan you're putting in place for a patient, can you deliver it properly? So say, for example, you're thinking about, it might be shockwave therapy, and you want to do it once a week for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Do you have the appointments? Is your appointment schedule set up in a certain way that you can actually book those appointments in? Because it's fantastic to get the patient in. It's fantastic to explain to them the treatment plan of shockwave therapy. But if you can't deliver it in a timely fashion, the way that it's supposed to be delivered, then you have dropped the ball. And that applies to a lot of other aspects. Someone may need orthotics. Are you making them wait 2-3 weeks before they're fitted? Or have you got a delivery system that can speed this process up? And to get them in your clinic faster, you may have to pay a little bit more. Ask your patients if they're prepared to pay that. That's all part of the delivery system. So just remember, every single business in existence has marketing, has sales, and has delivery. Podiatry is no different. Hope you get something from that. And also, this particular episode, Why Podiatrists Play It Safe, there's actually going to be a part 2 in 2 weeks' time. Okay, talk to you again soon. Bye.